Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Conscious Beauty Podcast, where we learn how to navigate through the matrix and become the most beautiful, conscious, and divine beings that we're meant to be. I have an incredible guest. His name is Bryson McCalley. He just got out of prison about a year and a half ago. I met him at an event in Los Angeles, and he is such an incredible spirit, beautiful soul. I can't wait for you to hear his story. You are going to be inspired, you're going to be mesmerized, and you are going to feel grateful for the life you have. Hi.
Hey, what's
Hey,
going on?
how are you?
I'm great. You?
Good. Happy Tuesday.
Yeah, I thought you were about to say happy late Easter.
No. So I was just making a little introduction about you and how we met. And I'm so excited to have you on this podcast. Really, I appreciate your time. And I'm excited for you to share your story with the world.
Absolutely. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share.
Yeah. So we met how many months ago? Like 2 months ago?
Just about. Yeah.
Okay. And one thing that you told me is you just got out of prison about, well, I guess a year and a half ago.
Right.
Now, it's really hard to figure out where to start with your story because your story seems to start from childhood, from the moment you were born to this moment now. It's like you've lived 1,000 lives.
For sure.
And I don't know how you want to start. Like, do you want to start with the day you were born?
Well, technically my memory don't even go past probably 5 years old. So, you know, my most vivid uh images of what was going on in my life and in my immediate environment was around 5 years old, you know.
hmm You had mentioned that you were born technically in a gang family.
For sure. I'm the youngest of four boys. All my brothers were gang members. My father was a gang member, and the men and women throughout my immediate family were all gang members. And if they didn't technically represent a particular gang, they still carried the mentality, because we all grew up in these same conditions. So I adopted these same values and beliefs myself, believing that this was the way. I didn't see anything different because I wasn't shown anything different. Even at 6 years old, my father allowed me to hold his shotgun. So that right there started to shape the belief that guns and gun violence were okay. And then as I began to grow up, getting into the neighborhood, into the streets even more, experiencing life even more, I began to see things that confirm that belief that guns and gun violence were okay. And that as you go throughout this world, which was really that small corner, that you got to pick a side. So that was my only mindset. Like, it wasn't, am I going to do something else? It was what side I was going to be from. Because my dad was from a different gang than my brothers were. And I believe the fact that I was actually raised by my mother, that's what pushed me that way towards my brother, the gang that my brothers were from. So,
How could it be that your dad was in a different gang?
well, people grow up in different areas. During his time, he grew up in a different area, which was populated by a different section. And that's what he chose. And he's actually from this, or was from the same gang that his older brother was from. So he ran up under his older brother, and then I ran up under my older brothers. But it was the same mentality. The only difference was the colors that they chose to wear. It was the
And this
same
was
activity.
in Long Beach,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. The darkest corners on the east side of Long Beach.
And so when your father gave you that gun at 6 years old, do you remember the feeling you had?
For sure. I remember feeling excited because it wasn't the same gun we was buying off the ice cream trucks, the little plastic guns. You know, it
Mhm.
was the real deal. And this is someone who's supposed to light my path giving me this, you know, and looking down on me. And as I looked up at him, you know, for affirmation as to whatever I was feeling, you know, he even told me to pull the trigger, you know, so I remember the click. You know, I remember how heavy it felt, you know. So these things, and then as I got older, I began to see my older siblings with these things, you know, that further confirmed to me, like, eventually, when am I going to have one? So as a child, these are the type of things that you're considering as I'm growing up. Because, you know, as a human species, we only think of survival at the end of the day. But people have their own perspective on what that looks like. And the environment that I grew up in, it was a unique perspective on what it takes to survive. So you convince yourself, as I convinced myself, that it's necessary. Not that it's a nowadays it's more of a trend. It's a cool factor. But when I was growing up, it's necessary. You know, if not for that, you're going to get ate up out here.
Mhm.
So it's all about, once I gain the insight and began to forgive anyone and everyone up until that point, whoever did anything to me, it was also just forgiving my parents because they can only teach me what they knew. You know,
Mhm.
a parent would never just make you want to go off the cliff or do something or destroy yourself. They gonna give you what they thought was the tools that you needed to survive.
Mhm. It's a cycle.
Right.
And I remember we were talking and you did say that you felt like your parents loved you,
For sure.
like they unconditionally loved you.
Unconditionally.
Now, there's a lot of kids who don't have that in their life. They don't feel that from their parents. So I'm curious to know if having that seed inside of you is the necessary seed to be able to get out of what you just came through. Do you know what I mean?
Uh
That
Not
that
really, because
foundation.
I believe everybody, you know, should experience that type of unconditional love, but that alone did not help me get out of it. My parents didn't help me get out of that mindset I was in. Though that they always loved me, but they did not facilitate this process, you know, because they still only knew what they knew. Now I'm learning something different that contradicts what y'all knew.
Mhm.
And I had to take it upon myself and have my own willpower and self-determinism in order to go through that fire, you know, and revise and refine my spirit all the way through.
Well, what I mean is some parents hate their children. And when you were in prison, and the audience will hear your story, you still had that love that some people who may be in prison right now or were in prison can't make it because they never had that love. And they won't be able to pull out of what they're in right now, or they kill themselves, or they can't get out of it. I'm just curious to know if that is one element of unconditional love that not everybody in this world experiences. Your parents were giving you knowledge, the knowledge that they knew, but they also gave you love, as opposed to someone else in your same environment getting the same knowledge of the gang life, right, and survival, but not having that seed of love carrying them through, even though they weren't aware of it. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing because I only came to that conclusion in hindsight. I didn't grow up feeling that way.
Ah, okay. So
Because
tell me about that.
yeah, because it's like you can love somebody, but that doesn't automatically equate to like having parenting skills.
Yes,
so that a
totally.
child can know that you love them. Like you can love them deep down and just you suffer more than they suffer when your child hurt, but your parenting skills is not there. To where as a child, I still felt like nobody cared about me, so I don't care about nobody.
Mhm.
Then when I got snatched so far away to prison as a kid still, now it's like they remove you, they even make you more distant from that love. So I didn't feel it in there, because my parents were still experiencing poverty when I left. So my books wasn't filled with money to buy canteen and commissary and stuff like that. They were still struggling. So to be snatched away for so long, so young, you really feel that isolation sink in. To where you have people who parents love them, but once again, when you're going through that circumstance, you can still feel lonely creeping up your spine, that loneliness. And it still causes people to hang themselves, even though they had love. So it's like you can have love, but that doesn't equate to like great parenting skills.
For sure. So, how old were you when you went to prison?
Prison, I was 19. I got arrested at 18.
When may I ask what it was for?
Yeah, it was three. I got charged for 3 attempted murders, 3 robberies, 2 assaults with a deadly weapon, gun enhancement, 2 special allegations of gun enhancement and gang enhancement.
Now, you had mentioned that it's kind of glorified to go to prison. So, tell me your feelings about prison. And from the point of you growing up and kind of seeing that as something to actually look forward to then when you got arrested, to then your sentencing, to then spending that first night in prison.
Right. Growing up, I've seen, every generation in my family before me get out, go back in, get out, go back in, and make it seem like it was a thing to do. You know, People get out, and I see that they have more respect now. They got a little more influence in the neighborhood. So as a kid, we act out for that sense of belonging, that power, that respect, that praise. So when I seen these people get more of that by going in and coming out, and nobody talks bad about going to prison, I saw it as a rite of passage. You go in there, earn more respect, you do more damage, you get back out, in and out. So, and as we grow up, a kid never fully understands, but we were aware of the fact that it's only a few ways you're gonna come up out of this. You're gonna die or go to prison. But the fact that I had no purpose at that point as a kid, and I feel like the streets gave me that, I was willing to make that sacrifice. And that's one of the most powerful drivers for any kid is that purpose, like to have that sense of purpose, to feel like you are part of something greater than you, and this is going to mean something at the end of the day. But really, I come to find out in hindsight, it means nothing. It's insignificant. So the people I idolized were disposable heroes. They were my heroes, but they was disposable to society. Like a cigarette, once it's used up, people gonna toss you wherever they see fit, and nobody's gonna care. So the purpose was actually intangible at the end of the day. But up until going to prison, I never saw it like that. I always saw like everything I'm doing, it means everything in the world. And when I made my sacrifices, wrongfully so, I got kicked to prison. I was fighting 5 life sentences, but got sentenced to 30 years in prison. And as I sat in that courtroom, I can tell my lawyer didn't care about me. My dad it was just my dad at the court sentencing day, but my mother was supposed to go to work. She said she felt something because I didn't even know I was getting sentenced that day, but she felt something that made her show up. So she popped up out of nowhere in the middle of me getting sentenced. So while I was sitting there, I just felt a calm in my spirit. It was so calm, like because I know I'm about to be sitting for a long time. I'm not going nowhere, and I attempted to fire my attorney just to give myself more time to try to figure something out and strategize and not get so much time. The judge denied me which was my right to do if you don't trust your attorney, but the judge still denied me from doing that. The district attorney had a side talk with my father and told him, I don't lose. If you go to trial, I'm not going to lose. He better take this deal. So she scared him. He scared me. It told me like not to go to trial. So I'm like, oh man. And it was so like wicked how they came up with my time. They didn't even have nothing figured out. They just grabbed the penal code book with every charge in it and found how they can sentence me right then and there. So they were just winging it, playing with my life, though I played with my own at one point. So they sentenced me to make sure they can just come up with the 30 years. And then off I went. 19 years old, I hit High Desert State Prison, And when I got there, it was only like nerves because of what I didn't know. It wasn't nerves as far as like, oh, it can be violent in here. That's where I come from. But it was the nerves of just not knowing nothing, because even though I seen my family members come in and out of prison, the homies come in and out of prison, nobody really broke it down, like the details of what to expect. So I went in there, on edge because I'm not knowing who is who and how they gonna react, etc. But when I went in there with 30 years. My very first cellie, he already been down that much. So as I was making my bed, I looked at him. I said, if you don't mind me asking, how long you been down? He said, I've been down 30 years. I said, wow. I said, damn, I came in here with that. So I'm looking at him like he's still like upright, mobile. And I'm like, damn, maybe I can do it. Like just by looking at him, you know.
How old was he?
He was like 50. He was in his early 50s because he came in as a teenager.
Oh gosh.
So
That is
it was
so
like a
hard.
blessing in this. Yeah, it was a blessing in disguise. I see now for somebody like me. It's not for everybody, but for somebody like me, it was a blessing in disguise to go in that particular cell. Because when you're down that long in an environment like that, you become real acute with reading character. And he saw something in me that compelled him to want to like help me grow, for however long I was in his presence. So every night he gave me his bag of regrets of what he wish he would have did, what he doing now, how he view life. He asking me questions, want to know my perspective. He's showing me books if I want to educate myself. And one of the main things he told me that I'll never forget, he said, whatever you want to do in life, start right then and there. Because the longer you wait, the longer it's going to take. He said, I'm in here with 3 life sentences, even though at this point I beat 2 of them and I'm about to beat my last one. But he like, man, I could have beat this 10 years ago, but I was playing, so I wasted so many years of my life that I can never get back. So he said, whatever you want to do in life, do it. Do it right then and there. And that's how I always been. Like, I don't wait for nothing. If I know I want to do something, I get on it and we're going to figure it out along the way.
Yes, absolutely. What was the first book that he gave you or to read? Or what was the first book that he suggested you read when you were there?
It was really above me because I wasn't a reader, but it was called The World's Great Men of Color. And it spoke about kings and pharaohs and all these royalty throughout history that were of color. whether it's in India, wherever. So, but that was above my ability to grasp it at that time. But I fought through it though. I fought through the book, and that's why I always say the very first book that actually had an impact though at the time that I read it was As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Very first book that pretty much told me you can't blame nobody at the end of the day. Your mind, you have the ability to shape and control your conditions. You become as dominant as your smallest goals. Like, it told me like the power is in you. It wasn't in the gun. It wasn't in the peers or anything external. It was in you. So that book was the first one that actually had gave me that first spark up in me, start twisting in that light bulb inside me.
How beautiful. And so you told me you read 600 books in prison.
Sure. For sure.
Were you just like, I have nothing else to do, but I'm going to take advantage of this time?
Yeah, because it's always like people think because you're isolated that it's easier to stay out of trouble, not knowing that prison, everything on the streets is concentrated in prison because all the devious activities that men do that got caught for it, they don't stop because they're in prison. So everything just becomes more concentrated. Whereas it might be out here, a hustler 10 blocks away, another one this 5 blocks this way. In prison, they right next door, the next cell over, so it's much easier, in my opinion, to do negative when you in there.
Interesting.
So it took more discipline, took more willpower, and being honest with myself as to what I really want. And I used to just any book I could find because they didn't have no programs in High Desert State Prison. And 2009, 2010, when I first went in there, they didn't have their first program till 2015, and that was just AA. So the whole first couple of years, I had to ask people for their books. I had to sacrifice getting packages of food just to tell people, no, just order me a book. I eat this bull crap that they giving us. Just order me a book. Because I felt the power of education now. I ain't felt power like that before. That was coming from in me. And I wanted to continue to explore that. And I just kept binging. And when I start having my own thoughts, I start maintaining conversations on a higher level. When I start interpreting life on a deeper level, I just knew if I could make it out, I'm going to be all right. And not only that, just by having education and remove the veil off your eyes by being in there, you begin to see patterns by being in there. And it helped me to really navigate a lot of unthinkables in prison.
So how did you get your sentence shortened?
A law passed in 2015 called Senate Bill 261. And what that is if you were under the age of 23, in which I was 18, then you are technically a youth offender because science proves that your brain is not fully developed until 25. So that gave me the opportunity to go see the parole board on my 15th year, only to be eligible. Now, then it was up to me to prove to them that I not only understand where I went wrong and how I developed into the person that committed that crime, but how did I change and what are my relapse prevention plans to never go back to that? And the fact that I expressed myself to them genuinely and clearly, they let me go on my first board hearing. Some people go 3 times, 4 times until they feel like they're ready. I got it on my first one.
But they know that the system doesn't work because you're a minority. but the majority of people go back out and they repeat the same thing. So it's like, why did it work with you? You had the right person in the cell, your friend. He's your friend. He's an angel, actually. I
Right.
actually believe people are angels.
Right.
So he was your angel.
Right.
And, or is it you were open to that, whereas somebody else in the next stall over, maybe they did have an angel, but they weren't open to it.
For sure. It works. I do believe it works both ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got the giver and the receiver. Both of you guys have to be right for that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because even I myself, and I'm pretty sure you, have given people so much wisdom and advice, but yet they wasn't ready to receive it.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm sure he came across other young men who wasn't ready. I just so happened to be ready because I was immediately presented with an experience that was contrary to my inner beliefs. I believe growing up that making the sacrifices that I was making and was willing to make, that I should be treated like royalty. That was my warped belief system. But when you go in there, it's completely contrary. When you're getting
Mm-hmm.
stripped naked by another adult at their will, you know, when you have to eat this food that is so like degrading that people wouldn't even feed their dog. When you have to sit in this box 24 hours a day where you can stretch both arms and touch both walls. Where while you're sitting in there, you may get a call that one of your close relatives just passed and now you can't show up to the funeral. You know, and once you go to sleep thinking about that, you wake up to your next door neighbor hung himself. Like you're dealing with all these things like that's just pressed up on you. And it's like, where's the royal treatment? So I couldn't interpret it like that, but I felt it. So I was ready. I was opening up to things that were different to see like, hold on, like what else is it? You know, and it was up to me to really latch on to that because it's never an overnight success when you was as dark as I was, or for people who come from that side, you know, I had to recondition my inner environment. We got the external conditions of our environment that contribute to our development, but once we start internalizing things, we start reconditioning our own inner environment. And when I was growing up, I talk about how I feel like I was like watering my flower, but in darkness. No sunlight. So I was trying to water it because I thought what I was doing was right. Like,
Yes.
but it was in darkness. Education gave me that sunlight,
Mhm.
you know. So
That's a beautiful thing you just said. That's really, really inspiring, especially for young people. You know, a lot of people, aside from the gang life in Long Beach, I think right now as a society, young kids, and we spoke about this. I mean, there's just no guidance whatsoever, you know, and they're being raised by social media and the glamorized, you know, notion of get rich quick, which you know doesn't work
for sure,
because your parents were still in poverty
right,
doing, I mean, where did that all lead to? Nothing.
right,
Continue a perpetual cycle of poverty,
right,
right? And I remember that when we were on the phone talking, we talked about like, I mean, what I call the matrix, what everyone calls the matrix, Maya, whatever it is. You were raised in this system which basically teaches you to eat your own children, so to speak. It's almost like somebody's laughing because they know, similar to a petri dish of bacteria, the bacteria is just going to overgrow and eat themselves to death.
for sure,
So it's kind of this like weird, twisted game,
for sure,
right? And it still continues.
right,
How do you feel that people, because we still have gangs, correct?
for sure,
Do you feel it's becoming even greater, a greater kind of problem in our world, or do you think it's slowly diminishing?
I think it's a cultural thing. I will generalize it more to culture, just the mentality, the cultural beliefs and values that's going on is allowing people to become worser, allowing the youth to become worser. You know, the principles and things that they live by, like there's no honor, there's no integrity, there's no nothing. Everything is just a fad. You know, dehumanizing people in general is bad. But if we talk about like what's worse or what's not, I believe like if you have no structure at all, you have nothing inherently, like nothing, you know, no, you don't know what you stand on. Like that's all the way bad in general. So when you go back in time, certain subcultures was created as a means to really survive
Mhm.
because certain races, certain minorities really had to create an alternate society in order to even get anywhere in life because of the systematic racism that was going on. So you had these alternate societies that was created out of necessity to either get anything, to get a grain of rice or whatever. Nowadays, when you don't need to do that no more, because things have opened up, you know, the matrix, I believe, will always be there. You know, that's corporation for you. You know, when we talk about all these narratives they trying to push at us to keep us like gone in this elusive state, like that's gonna always be there. But it's like what's going on today is way more like, for lack of a better word, watered down. Because it's no longer, you don't need to do it no more. So why is you doing it? You doing it because you think it makes you look cool, you know, because this girl that you like, she's into boys who do this, and you get the praise from your peers and stuff like that. So you're really willing to sell yourself out and sell your soul when you really don't need to.
Did you ever feel or understand or ask yourself what is the concept of good and evil? Like, did you ever think for a moment that you were doing something wrong?
No, until I got an education. I honestly believe growing up, because that's all I knew, you know. And so when the brother that's closest to me in age, when he got sentenced to prison at 16 years old with 25 years, I honestly believe that the system committed a wrongdoing against us because I fooled myself into believing that these are the prevailing standards of our society. You either get him or he's going to get you. Dog eat dog. You know, survival of the fittest. All these terms, like, I believed in that wholeheartedly. I seen nice guys get ate up. So I didn't never believe, like, some kids actually knew what they was doing was wrong. But my guardians encouraged me to do this. So I never believed that what I was doing was wrong, and always felt like the system committed injustice against us up until the point to where I became enlightened.
I like that word. You wrote a book, and in the book, you talk about mastering your own narrative.
Right.
So I want you to really elaborate on that, where, you've only been out of prison for a year and a half.
Right.
You've accomplished so much in such a short period of time.
Thank you.
And I want you to give some people some tools that they can use, that they can be inspired by if they're listening to this and they're really kind of like in a bad situation, especially if they're young, like young teenagers.
Right. Um, in short, the book is called Pearls of Ism: Change Your Life by Changing Your Self Narrative. And I've come to understand that though we grow up with these narratives around us, because as a baby comes into this world, it is a blank slate. It is given the tools on how to survive in life, how to communicate, how to love itself and how to love others, how to handle conflict, all these things by the people around it, by what it sees on TV, what it hears in the music, what his family is leading by example with. These are the narratives around him. And for me, I adopted the narratives that I believe was going to get me ahead in life from the people that I believed had the answers until I began to believe otherwise. And while I was in prison, I come to realize that though I adopted these narratives, the strongest narrative that had the greatest influence on me was the stories I was telling myself about myself and about the world around me that caused me to function the way that earned me that time in prison. I can't blame them. That's a contributing factor. But at the end of the day, I was telling myself that I have to do this, that this has to be done, that I don't like these people, and et cetera, et cetera. So taking control of my narrative allowed me to become empowered, and I started, as I was gaining education, start forming my own perspective on life, how I truly felt, that wasn't held hostage to peer approval. It was what I wanted to do and how I view life. And that's how I was able to change my life, by changing the stories I was telling myself about myself and about the world around me. And in doing so, I not only navigated prison on a higher level, I sliced my entire time in half, that 30 years, and got out in 15 years when I was still supposed to be in there doing time right now. I could have caught a life sentence while being in there. I could have
Mm.
never came home, period. So this right here, everything I put in that book, I know to be true from knowledge, wisdom, and experience. You can change your life by changing your self narrative and controlling your narrative, which is easier said than done the younger you are. Because once again, science proves that your brain is not fully developed. So it will come a time where as a teenager, you believe that you're not doing what everybody else is doing, but really you are,
Mhm.
you know, and all it takes is for you allow to, like, boredom. You allow boredom to set in, and it's all about what your friend want to do, and you just gonna go with it. And then
Mm.
he end up doing some ignorant stuff, and now you get caught up in a bad situation. Most
That's
kids
so
don't. Yeah, most kids don't have a mind of their own. But the first step is understanding that, admitting that to yourself. Once you admit that you only doing stuff because other people is doing it, then you can start working to change it.
true.
And you can start connecting the dots as to, why does this make me think this way? Why does this make me react this way? Why does this make me feel this way? And how do I really want to think, react, and feel? And you can begin to change that. Because at the end of the day, we all have power that's influential. So when we think that we have to be pulled into what's popular or what's in all actuality, as long as you put yourself in a leadership position within yourself, you're going to gain your own followers anyway. And a lot of kids don't realize that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm experiencing that with my 18-year-old son. His friend just quit high school, and now my son's, saying, "What's the point of high school?"
Mm.
By the way, did you finish high school?
No, I dropped out at in the 11th grade. I really got kicked out and stopped going back.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
and it wasn't until I got my GED in prison when I was 25. And then I
Oh,
started going to college in prison. I got out, continued college as a film student. Within a month of being out, I enrolled back in college, became a film student, acted in multiple short student films. I'm now in post production of my own concept film called Battle for Pedigree. As
mhm.
you just mentioned, I published a book. I'm working on my second one. I built up my YouTube channel. I didn't and I've been a production assistant this whole time on all the biggest brands, commercials. I graduated from Drucker Business School. Like I'm doing a lot, and that's only half of it.
Tell me about your podcast, Last of a Dying Seed. What does that mean?
Last of a Dying Seed, a short story. I just got granted parole, and I still had a 4-month window because the people who granted me have to send it up to their bosses, and everybody have to approve of the decision. So in the 4 months that I was waiting, I was sitting in my cell and I was watching The Woman King, on a 15-inch flat screen TV. And it was a scene towards the end when the king spoke to his people, when he said that the Americas have come to believe that if you want to keep a people in chain, you must first convince them that they are meant to be bound. And that just like messed my head up, and I like told my cellmate, like, man, you heard that? He said, what? I said, that's us in the street.
For
We
sure.
believe that we are meant to be bound. Going to prison is a rite of passage. It's expected. Like, if a person is doing damage in the world and you ain't went to prison yet, we feel like that's kind of suspect. So just that mentality
That's
alone, yeah. And then understanding Black history, understanding systematic oppression, understanding all these things that really tainted the mentality in a large way. I'm just like, man, and also understanding screenwriting at that point, because I read a lot of filmmaking books up until that point to know that you can't write a successful movie without having traits within these characters and situations that relate to real life. So I'm like, man, I'm pretty sure everybody got a movie that they can relate to. And then shortly after that, I was talking to a childhood friend, and I said, out of everybody you brought into this lifestyle, everybody that you had up under your wing, where they all at? I said, they either dead, in jail, or still trying to figure it out, off drugs. And I said, I'm not innocent of that. Everybody I taught is dead, in jail, or still trying to figure it out. I said, all our seeds is dying off. And that's when the name hit me, Last of a Dying Seed. Like, everything we produce from here on out is going to bear fruit. The buck stops here.
I love that. You're friends now. So are you still in contact with some of them right
Some of
now?
them, yeah. Those
And
the
what are
ones I
they?
like deserve it.
What? Sorry.
Those I feel like who deserve it, that's on a different page.
Oh, so are there some of your childhood friends who are kind of getting their life together?
Oh yeah, for sure. For
Really?
sure. And I'm grateful for the power and influence that, God bestowed upon me, that I was able to rub off on them, to where they constantly let me know how much I inspire them and cause them to look themselves in the mirror because of how I used to be. It's like, if somebody like me can change, that they know, like, it's different when you just hear somebody's story
Right.
that you don't know. But when
Right.
you know somebody that was just like gone and he just went from dark to light, it's like, dang, how did you? And I'm making it make sense when I talk to him.
Yeah.
It inspires them.
It's like Darth Vader, you know, changing all of a sudden.
Right,
Wait a
right,
second, you were so evil. Wait, why are you good now? That's funny.
right.
So what movie was the most influential movie for you besides the that other one? Was it growing up? Was there like a movie or something where you were like, oh my gosh?
I don't think I was ever influenced by a movie, but there are movies I can relate to based on the lifestyle.
Hmm.
So my as far as my youth years, it was Menace to Society. You know, that's like the most relatable for me. As I grew up, I look at movies like The Hobbit. I can go from The Hobbit to Hurricane Carter with Denzel Washington to uh The Last Airbender. I can go from any type of genre because this is what I do now. I relate movies to life. So I'm always finding myself in a lot of different movies and scenarios and stuff as people come on and they pick a movie that they believe relates to their life experience.
Mhm. In your book, you were talking about how virtual reality can kind of help later on if we're immersed in like a virtual reality program, and then AI can like figure out what you need, give you a little bit of less of this because maybe you're not needing that or whatever. I was thinking, I'm like, what if that's what we're in?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah, like reality isn't real no more anyway. You know, everybody's in virtual reality on their phones, you know. So what VR is doing is just pulling you more into, like you say, the matrix. But everything has its benefits. It's up to the person to be strong enough to know how to use the tools around him. Like what you do with your podcast, if you throw this on VR, you being one human being can't travel to 100 countries in a year, but you could be on VR, and when your platform being big enough can have 1,000 people in the room while you're talking. So
mhm.
that's power in it for somebody who is a self-help, self-development, a motivational speaker, life coach, whatever. Like, it has its benefits. For children, me and my friend Carlos Vasquez, we was in prison together, and he was at the event
Oh,
that
okay,
we met
yeah,
at. Yeah, he was a
yeah.
speaker there. So when we was on the same yard, I worked in a law library, and I used to call him and a few other guys every Wednesday to the library, and we'd go in the little book room and just share ideas, take notes, and build with each other, and all of us made it out, and all of us is doing good. But I bring him up because we spoke about a VR concept of allowing people to experience traumatic events without having to go through it so that they won't have to experience it. Because in a way, we're doing that by telling our story anyway, telling people, like, look, we took that path. This what happened. Don't go that way. We already doing that. But in VR, what if we had that and actually created like simulated scenarios, and maybe that'll give people like the foresight needed in order to navigate events. So that's one of the things that could prove helpful. But yeah, they got other things for the Navy that they're using, and so VR is powerful, but it can also suck you into just being gone, you know, going with the wind.
Well, also it's a form of escapism. You know what I mean? Not wanting to deal with your immediate reality, going somewhere else, just like we do with watching movies.
For sure.
It's like a way to just zone out,
For
you know?
sure.
But like you were talking in your book, we really have to be careful with what we're consuming,
For sure.
you know? So
Right.
anything negative, even those, those gangster movies that you're talking about, there's tons of violence in that.
For sure.
And as much as like the young kid is watching that and experiencing the violence, they're glamorizing that. So in a sense, it won't change.
Right.
They'll just repeat what they see.
Right.
So that could be also the same with virtual reality.
For sure. Because Corey Kimbrough, the Menace to Society movie, he actually came on a platform and related to his life. And with him, it was opposite. He actually said that movie influenced him instead
Mhm.
of just relating to it. So yeah, they do have movies to where people are like, actually they seeing that and they like, oh yeah, I want to be him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they perform that on the world stage in real life.
Yeah, exactly. What was, if you don't mind me asking, what was, I mean, I don't really want to talk about this, but this is interesting because this is a reality of prison that nobody told you. And I don't understand why nobody told you that.
Right.
So, what was like one of the darkest moments when you were in prison and you just thought, oh my God,
Uh,
why am I here? And how do I get out?
I would probably say it was like 3-4 years in of just like not even feeling like in order to even I just came because it's like where they kicked me to, you seeing people die every day that you're not on lockdown. You're either on lockdown or when you come off, somebody getting stabbed to death. And at times I'll be wondering how the fuck did something happen when we're in the cell for 6 months, like to where he got to get stabbed to death, you know? But it's always like every time we're at yard, somebody's dying. And about a few years into my sentence, I just cut everything off, all feeling. I'm like, you can't survive in here with emotion. So I got it in me that was probably the darkest moment because I didn't feel nothing. I felt like just whether because I was still a part of something as well. So I'm like, whether I live or die, like it is what it is. That's when every word in that sentence really meant everything. It is what it is. You know, and I had to really bring myself back to that. And that only came like probably once I left that prison. Like that particular prison, you know. Once I left that, then I started to have a little bit of hope. Like, all right, I'm getting closer to my board date. You know, things are still happening, but I still got a little bit of hope because I'm more enlightened. I can see things before they even happen to navigate stuff. I didn't have any vices, you know, so I didn't have to worry about that. I didn't care about gambling, doing drugs, whatever all these vices people had. I didn't have that, so I didn't have to worry about that. So I would say, like, yeah, the first few years in, that's when I cut everything off because I believe that's what the state I needed to be in order to survive. You know, because defeat was not an option for me. I'm not hanging myself. That's out. You know, but at the same time, I know that we never know when God's gonna call us home as well. So I'm like, if it gotta be in here, it is what it is.
And your friend, he's still in there?
My first celly.
The angel?
I don't even. I know he beat his third life sentence like he told me.
Oh, so
Yeah,
he's out?
yeah.
Oh, so are you in contact with him?
No, it's been
Oh,
so long. I don't know where he's at. Because
wow.
in prison, everybody know everybody. So I heard that he beat his third life sentence.
Oh, you're gonna run into him again.
Right. Hopefully.
Yeah, I'll call it out right now.
Right. Out the blue, just see him like, man, and he tell me he been watching the channel the whole time.
That's funny. Anyway, so if you don't mind me asking, so you have four brothers.
Right.
All of them went to prison, correct?
Uh, 4 of us went to prison. One just went to the county, but we all went to jail pretty much. Yeah.
And you still have a brother that's in jail.
Yeah, have a life sentence right now.
Yeah. And are you able to visit him?
The first time I tried, I got shot down, I guess due to my record. But yeah, so I still talk to him on the phone, video chat with him.
Oh, that's nice. So if you could tell everyone what we could do to help prisoners, do something for them. I mean, everyone has their own opinion
For
about
sure.
this, right? They deserve it, that whole thing. I mean, who's to judge, who's to say,
For
right?
sure.
But at the end of the day, you're a true testament to how somebody can change. The human soul is so fragile, and children are so fragile. I mean, you're given a gun at 6 years old. What does that do to a child?
For sure.
Like, really? And so, what can somebody do?
It's one of 3 things that can have a powerful impact for someone going through that situation, because he also has to go to the parole board within the next year and a half. So if people just want to write them support letters, that can help. Parole, when they see that you have support from the outside, then because they understand environmental conditioning. They understand that. So support from the outside, we believe, gives you a greater chance of transitioning back into the real world as a civilian now. So that's why support letters are so valuable. I was writing people support letters when I was still in prison. you know, because I was so good with my words and my writing, and I've done enough work on myself that they still even considered it for other inmates that was going aboard from me, another inmate. So support letters, but if you want to provide funds as well, that's a big impact because the longer people are down, the less people are there supporting them financially. And they are subjected to half a tray of slop that the state is feeding them.
So that's how it works. Like you get more food if you have some kind of financing.
Exactly. If people, they call it your books. People can send money to people's books in there. It's like
Mhm.
an account. That's another word for their own personal account. Every inmate has an account. And when you
Okay.
send them money, now they're able to go to what they call the store and buy these limited items that they have, but is the food is more real than what they're feeding them in that kitchen. And it allows them to not starve, not lose weight, and to survive a little longer. So you
So
can,
how do all these guys have so much muscle if they're not eating enough?
well, everybody body type is different. So like me, I didn't have to eat that much, but my exercise routine was different to where I was still able to keep the structure and stuff like that. But you got other men who they need to eat. And then
Mhm.
so it's like everybody body type is different. And nowadays prison don't look like the movies. Everybody don't have muscles in there. you know that.
Wow, that's interesting. You get a bunch of angry men who are hungry. That's not a good combination. you know,
Absolutely not. And then
yeah,
the worst combinations get a bunch of men that has no hope.
absolutely.
Like they say in the movie Shawshank Redemption, like the worst thing you could take from a man is hope. That's a real thing. Like,
For
so yeah,
sure.
they can do that too. And then the third thing is send people books. Like education saved my life, and I seen it save plenty of other men.
Okay, that's a wonderful thing to know. Tell me about your amulet that you're wearing.
Oh, my legacy piece. Well, this was created by the company, The Storied Artifact. Founder and CEO Joy Osaka Lu, who we also met, or who I met at the same event that we met at, and she created this 14 karat pendant for me that is pretty heavy. It's worth 20,000 as a way to sponsor the channel, Last of a Dying Seed. She took to my story. She loved the good work that I'm doing, how I made a change and the light that I'm trying to be in this world. And she created this for me with images that are symbolic to my life. The first image is water, if y'all can see. And that's symbolic to my life because at a time where I was in my dark phase, it was time all my brothers was in prison at that point, and I was just running the streets by myself. And there was times where I would just go to the beach and just look at the water, and that was the only little pocket of quietness that I had before I went back into the chaos. So then when I went to prison, I started thinking deeper on the concept of water and believed that in order to make it this far in my life, I had to behave like water. I had to overcome so many obstacles and barriers and roadblocks and twists and turns and find the cracks through the wall while maintaining my essence all the way through. So that right there is water. And then I got the face of, they're all part of the same family, the jaguar, the leopard, and the panther. But so I got the half the face of the leopard right here because I'm into animals, and the more I learned about them, they say there's 20,000 more of them than any other cat species because of their ability to adapt. And then I always felt like when I was in my dark state, it was me against the world, and leopards are solitary creatures. They're enemies with everybody in the jungle, you
Hmm.
know. So just their agility and what they represent as a species, I identify with that. And that's a big part of my life. And then last but not least is the seed. Obviously last of a dying seed, but my brand made me think about the seed on a deeper level. And how Joy pointed out so perfectly, I couldn't have said it better, is that everything a seed needs to grow is already encoded in its blueprint. And that's what I began to realize as I gained the education. Like, I'm looking outside of myself for all these things to empower me when it's already in me. Everything that I need to accomplish and get anything my heart's desire is already in me. It was encoded in my blueprint. I just got to cultivate it like a seed in order for it to reach its highest potential. So she created this for me. The whole process of the video of what we talked about and how this came about is on the channel. And I love it. First sponsorship.
That is so beautiful. I think about that often. I mean, that's one of the things that actually blows my mind the most is the coding. An oak tree can only be an oak tree, right? And
Right,
it has all that coding in that seed.
right,
And it's just like when the environment is right, then it will start to unfold and grow, right? But the
right,
environment has to be right.
right.
So, I mean, I totally live my life. I mean, I try my best to live, water, give it some food.
Right.
But I think it's important to understand the environment, for people, that every single thing that you're surrounded by will affect you.
Exactly.
So choose wisely,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. And that's why on my channel, I speak with a high level of fairness. Like, I don't just point the finger at, oh, they did this to us, without pointing at myself with how I responded to it. Everybody's responsible. So that's what I believe. Like, the environmental conditions played a big role, but also the things I chose to internalize and condition myself with played an even larger role. Because just think, the environment didn't change in prison when I chose to, but the fact that I began to change my inner environment changed the results I started to get in that same environment.
Fascinating.
The power of self-narrative and controlling your narrative.
And then mastering it.
For sure, for sure, for sure.
So, if you could tell people the 5 top books that you'd recommend. As a Man Thinketh,
Oh,
number 1.
definitely. Mastery by Robert Greene.
Okay.
That was a big book that was influential on me. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. These books are famous for a reason. Like, they really work. Let me see. I read so many. It's obviously Prosaism by Bryson McCalley. You know, and Warrior in the Garden by Carlos Vasquez.
Oh, shout out to your friend.
Right.
Okay. And last few pieces of advice that you would give somebody.
Once again, I'm gonna just reiterate: controlling your narrative. That's where true power comes from, when you do what you want to do, when you live how you want to live. When a oak tree, if you look at nature, they reach their full potential as they supposed to exist. You could be great at being like somebody else, but if you're not original, then you're not really living out your purpose, doing what you're designed to do in this world. And for me, I would start all the way from square one if I can still be me, though, rather than living somebody else's life or trying to imitate somebody else. So that's all I like. Control your narrative and be you. And it sounds cliche, but I'm living proof.
I really love that. That
Thank
makes me want to cry. I'm serious.
you. Right.
That is so true what you just said. And that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so you have a bunch of projects coming up?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Anything I should know of?
The biggest one yet is I'm still in post production of my concept film Battle for Pedigree, where I
Okay.
wrote, directed, and produced, and also took on the role of editing. So I'm in the process of raising money for the post production because anybody who knows about movies, it takes funds to make a movie, no matter how big or how small. Like, there's no such thing as no budget. All them YouTube videos that talk about no budget, there's no such thing. Whether you're spending money on gas the whole time that you're going from this location to this location, whether you're spending money on food because legally you have to feed your cast and crew, where you're spending money on costumes, or there's no such thing. Even the camera that you're using, all the way down to the laptop and editing platform. So I'm still raising money and still editing a Battle for Pedigree. And if everything goes right, if you guys want to donate to help us finish this movie, this passion project, if everything go right, then we'll be able to have a pre-screening on July 12th. That's the plan, because that marks my second year of being out, and I want to do it on that day.
Okay.
That's the main goal. The sub goal is my second book that I'm working on, which talks about the concepts within the context of value. Because I spoke to
Okay.
about 140 kids through an organization called Youth Champions,
Mm-hmm.
and I spoke about the concepts on how value is perception. Then I
Mm-hmm.
spoke about how value is context. I spoke about how value is story. And I spoke about how value is both rarity and impact. So I just broke down all these concepts within the context of value so that no matter where these kids are trying to go in this world, if they master these things, that they can thrive anywhere.
That's fantastic.
Thank
Okay. Well, I'm super excited. I'm so grateful to know you. And
you.
I look forward to helping you in any way I can, especially your brother.
Absolutely.
And yeah, yeah. I feel good about his situation.
Right.
Who am I? But, you know, I do feel like there's hope for him.
For sure. Yeah, keep
Yeah.
putting out
So
that great energy. You never know, miracles happen.
100%. 100%. So I'll have all your links and everything on my website. And I really thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful. You're an amazing soul, Bryson.
Thank you. Likewise. I appreciate you
Yeah.
from having me on here and helping me get my story more out there to the world.
Yeah. Okay. Have a beautiful day. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Likewise.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.